Wyoming. Roommate exposed us to toxic radon gas. What can I do legally? I, 26F, live in a 2-bedroom apartment with my 19M roommate. My roommate has a collection of clocks and old electronics he keeps in a case in his bedroom. I received my radon detector from a friend 3 days ago. He had high radon levels, 5 pci/L, in his house, but got it mitigated and now it's down below 1 pci/L, and wanted to give it to me as he didn't need it anymore. I turn it on, and after the warm-up period, see that it's reading 224 pci/L, not 2.24, in the main room. I move it to my bedroom, close to his, and it's maxing out at over 500 pci/L in my bedroom. My apartment lobby reads at around 3.5 pci/L. I did some research and the radium clocks do emit radon, but not nearly enough to cause that big of a spike in radon levels. I question him when he gets back from work, and he panics a bit, and tells me that he has around 13.5 millicuries of radium. He shows me the cabinet, and there's a vial of radium paint, a lot of shavings in glass jars, lots and lots of clocks and gauges, what he calls Soviet radium scales, old U.S. Army radium discs, and other items with radium. It's obvious how the apartment was contaminated, and I worry the radon is leaching into the rest of the apartments. He's been here and had his collection for over a year. Levels this high are basically unheard of and can cause cancer with ease, so I'm worried I might lose my life over this. Obviously this isn't my landlord's fault, it's the roommate, so what do I even do here? Does something like this break the lease and get my roommate and all his radium kicked out? Can I sue him if I get lung cancer out of this? What is my next step? You are probably going to want to contact the Radiological Assessment Program, which is part of the Nuclear Emergency Support Team. The Radiological Assistance Program, RAP, is the nation's premier first responder organization for assessing radiological incidents. RAP advises federal, state, local, and tribal public safety officials, first responders, and law enforcement personnel on steps to protect public health and safety or the environment during incidents involving radioactive materials. Here's a map with regional offices and their phone numbers. Not probably, OP needs to do this, full stop. You need experts evaluate the hazard. It's entirely possible that the house needs to be condemned or at the very least professionally decontaminated. You do not want this attempted by the roommate or landlord, so get in contact with the above-mentioned program ASAP. To be clear, I am not a lawyer, but I would be very surprised if your roommate is not in a lot of trouble, assuming the numbers posted are correct. He said millicuries and not microcuries? Are you sure? If it was millicuries, you need to stay far away from that cabinet if it's not lined with lead. Including whatever is the opposite side of the wall. At that point you're looking at a significant source of gamma radiation on top of the radon hazard. Does he have a Geiger counter? You need to report this stuff now. That's an absurd amount of radium to have lying around. Well, you can call the Wyoming Department of Environmental Quality and/or the federal EPA and ask what to do. Be prepared to move out immediately, as it's not far-fetched for your apartment to be declared a hazardous waste site. You are not going to be held to your lease if this happens. Do not suggest to your roommate that he throw this stuff out in the trash. You can't even throw out old smoke detectors, so the likelihood that he can safely throw this stuff out is zero. He certainly cannot do so legally. Forget about the legal question or your lease right now. Over 500 pci/L is a crazy high number and you need to get out of there immediately for your own safety. The EPA guidelines for radon exposure consider anything over 4 pci/L as hazardous. A level of just 10 pci/L is equivalent to smoking 20 cigarettes per day or having 500 chest X-rays annually. 500 pci/L is insane. You need to find someplace new to sleep immediately and please go see a doctor to check your lungs. You should also report this right away so that radium can be cleaned up safely. Please don't try to make it disappear quietly and shift the problem onto some other unsuspecting person. I'm sorry you have to go through this. The part that concerns me is the powdered and flaked radium paint particles, which are probably stored improperly and were probably put in their storage containers improperly. There's probably radium contamination through the entire apartment. That's why the radon levels are so high. The containers aren't gas tight and if he's ever opened them there's guaranteed radium contamination everywhere. I'm not going to sugarcoat this, you're probably going to lose every belonging. In that building it's now all low-level radioactive waste. That said, you need to do the following. Get out, phone, keys, ID, leave everything else. Call the appropriate authorities and keep calling until somebody listens. Call a lawyer, call your doctor, wait for the appropriate authorities to arrive and follow their instructions. Do not tell your roommate you're doing this. He might try to dispose of the radioactive materials improperly and make everything worse. Do not go to a hotel or anywhere else. You'll be shedding radioactive particles everywhere. Keep it contained. Do you know the name of the radon monitor you were using? Most home sensors are calibrated to accurately measure a narrow band of levels that are commonly found in homes and will give unreliable readings when you stray far beyond that range. That is in no way to minimize the urgency or danger of your situation. Just that it is difficult to know how they would behave or how their error bars would change outside of their standard operating parameters. Absolutely get out of that apartment as soon as possible and get yourself checked out. Check your belongings as well. If the roommate improperly stored everything, you could likely use the link in this page to report this as a complaint or ask them who you would for this. Here's another link as this is hazardous material. If that agency cannot handle such a situation, they would refer to the appropriate agency or likely report it themselves. I know more about environmental, public health than legal matters, but this would likely be a solid basis for you to break your lease, as this could be hazardous to your health. Report it to your landlord. Get out of there. Contact a local tenants' rights association if your landlord says they'll come after you for rent, as this is all on your roommate for contaminating your living space. If they come after you, sue your roommate. If your belongings are contaminated, sue your roommate for the amount you need to get rid of, which may be everything if there is so much radiation everywhere. Also, do not be sorry. This is your health. Do not feel bad if you need to sue your roommate. They are so negligent and downright insane for keeping these things. As to your lease, your apartment is not habitable anymore, due to no fault of yours. That should break your lease under Way law. IAAL, not in Way, not your lawyer. Please call your state health and safety department. I would take the radon readings with a grain of salt. Actual radon tests should be sent to a lab for accurate readings. You can buy them at most hardware stores. It's generally not illegal to own antiques that contain radium-226. If you suspect your roommate is storing these improperly or is otherwise in violation, you can report him to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. You can also call your local health department and see if they'll come test your apartment for radiation. He's probably not in violation of the lease. You're unlikely to get lung cancer, but if you did, it would be nearly impossible to trace it back to this. Your next steps are to move out if it makes you that uncomfortable. I would be less worried about the antique watches, and more about the vial of radium paint, shavings, radium discs, etc. It's generally not illegal to own antiques that contain radium-226. Absent a license from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, which roommate is unlikely to have. This is untrue. Except for intact timepieces containing a quantity up to 0.037 megabecquerel inverse bullet, 1 μc inverse bullet, of Ra 226 per timepiece, or certain smoke alarms that used radium. Certainly OP's description of roommates' inventory extends well beyond intact timepieces. All other items require either a general or specific license from the NRC. ETA. Okay, it looks like a general license is granted to everybody, but it has limits, and rules of its own. Link radium paint and shavings? Good lord. Better hope none of this spilled, or this place is getting gutted by workers in hazmat suits. If that happens, landlord better hope insurance doesn't try and get cute with the nuclear disaster exclusion in most property damage policies.